Pastor Ed here with Daily Devotions for Friday, January the 6th, 2022. Technically, on the church calendar today is Epiphany and marks the arrival of the wise men to encounter the newborn Jesus or young Jesus. Our traditional understanding of that is probably a little bit different than how it really worked out. And we've been kind of following that. We've been following the visit of the three wise men. We're actually a little ahead of that today, but I want to backtrack just a moment as we begin. And I want to start with a moment from history. In 1937, there was something called the Great Terror, also known as the Great Purge. And this was a brutal political campaign led by the Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin to eliminate any dissenting members of the Communist Party and anyone else that he considered a threat. Although estimates vary, most experts believe that at least 750,000 people were executed during the Great Terror, which started around 1936 and ended in 1938, and more than 1 million others were sent to forced labor camps known as the gulags. I bring that up because we're getting into a really regrettable, sad, tragic, whatever adjective you want to use, moment in the story of Jesus's early life. If you recall the visit of the wise men, they came following the star we talked about yesterday. That was maybe the conjunction of the planets and those Williams Comet 52 and 53 and so forth leading them. So there's some evidence, scientific evidence, that there was something that led them to Bethlehem. But they go to King Herod, as you recall. And here we were told by Matthew that it was in the time of King Herod that Jesus was born. So that's placing it somewhere between 6 BCE, before the Common Era, and 4 BCE. We used to say BC, before Christ, and so it was always odd when we realized that Jesus was actually born before Christ, but be that as it may. The one thing from the reading of the visit of the wise men at the beginning of chapter 2 of Matthew is the verse where it says, when King Herod heard from the wise men why they were there, who they were looking for, it says he became frightened. And it always bothered me. I preached on this a few years ago because that word frightened sounds like he was scared. And I guess in some sense he was, but that word is more often translated as troubled, agitated, anxious, distressed, even paranoid. He apparently, Herod started as a fairly capable ruler. His father had aided Julius Caesar, and now Herod the Great ruled as a client king. In other words, he ruled on behalf of the Roman emperor at this point, Augustus. And again, he started out okay, but after decades of rule, he became paranoid. And so he definitely became paranoid when some people come to him saying, we're looking for the king of the Jews. I mean, he was the king. He was only half Jewish, but he saw this as a threat. Paul Meyer, who I quoted yesterday, talks about that, just to give you an idea of what kind of a guy this Herod was. He was so jealous of his favorite wife that on at least 2 occasions he ordered that she be killed if he failed to return from a critical mission. He then finally killed her anyway, as well as her grandfather, her mother, his brother-in-law, 3 of his sons, not to mention numerous subjects. During a swimming pool party in Jericho, he also drowned the high priest, who happened to be another of his brothers-in-law. So he was a real villain, a real bad guy. And of course, that brings us up to at the end of in the reading of verses 2 through 1 through 12. The Magi or wise men were warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, so they leave, they sneak away. And that brings us up to verse 13 that we're looking at today. Now after they had left, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there till I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night, went to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I have called my son." When Herod saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, he was infuriated, and he killed all the children in and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had learned from the wise men. And this then fulfilled what had been spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, wailing and loud in lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be consoled because they are no more. Joseph Stalin was a monster on a huge scale, but Herod was pretty bad. Bethlehem, it's estimated, had about 2,000 people at that time. So again, that Paul Meyer estimates that maybe we're talking about 25 children. One child is too many, and we remember this as the massacre of the innocents, or the slaughter of the holy innocents. These innocent children, 2 years old or younger. So this also throws in the chronology a little bit out of whack. We had, in our manger settings, we have the wise men, right there with the shepherds in the stable. It didn't work out that way. They came some weeks, some months, maybe as long as up to 2 years later that they arrived. And Mary and Joseph aren't in a stable or a guest room. They're in a house at this point. So some time has gone by, and Herod, this paranoid, maniacal ruler, sees anybody who is being referred to as a king to be a rival, and so he chooses to have them destroyed. Now, there's no historical evidence that this happened. That doesn't mean it didn't. Bethlehem was a tiny village. 25 children is terrible, but it's not on a huge scale. But it just gives evidence to the kind of ruler Herod was, and the fact that Jesus was so vulnerable. Again, when God chose to come to be with us in the person of Jesus, so many other ways that we might have envisioned that happening or choosing for that to happen, but to come as a helpless, vulnerable child, and the fact that there was the risk that his life could have been snuffed out before it even got going is just almost too much to comprehend. But somehow God works through this, and Joseph is warned. Again, the angels intervening on their behalf. Joseph is warned, and they go to Egypt for safety. So we're gonna end there. We have one more day. We're gonna talk about the last verses of Matthew 2, about the return of Mary and Joseph and the baby Jesus, as we bring ourselves up to chapter 3, which is where we're going to be in our worship on Sunday. So wrap things up this week tomorrow, and then hope you'll join us on Sunday morning as we move ahead in time, I guess, to the baptism of Jesus. So hope to see you then. Hope to see you tomorrow first. Until then, take care. Bye.